So there's three different sources here, and I'm going to try and we'll see if I'm successful in this, but I'm going to try and sort of weave together a common theme that hopefully will give us a better insight into Pesach. What is it? What is Yetzias Mitzraim all about? And sort of help us understand the theme of the Moed. So to get started, we're going to look at Rav Yerucham in his Das Chachma Musar, and I apologize the way that the source sheet sort of came together. I had to take screenshots of this, from the Otsar because I wasn't able to print it to a PDF. So it's a little goofy, but it'll work. So he has this shtickle on Galus and Gezeros, meaning decrees that happen to us in Galus, and we'll see how that sort of comes about at the end. but it's actually very relevant, very nagea to Pesach. So let's just jump right into it. So he says, "Murgalim anu liyachis inin Yetzias Mitzrayim l'zechia ruchnius belvad." So he says, generally, we are used to thinking about the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim being a merit for us in spiritual matters only. And he says, "Be'emes gam kol hazechuyos gashmius shezechinu motzam hu rak b'Yetzias Mitzrayim." Even those physical, things that more material things that we have in life, those are also coming to us only because of the transformation from Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim hu mekor kol hazechuyos shazaka Klal Yisrael. Everything that we have, that Klal Yisrael has its roots in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Just like we read about in the Haggadah, right? It sort of encompasses everything in that phrase. So right at the beginning of Parshas Vayera, it says, "Lachein amar livnei Yisrael ani Hashem v'hotzesi eschem eretz mitachas sivlas Mitzrayim v'hitzalti v'lakachti v'hevesi." All of those different inyanim of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeems us is all encompassing, and it all comes from Yetzias Mitzrayim. So he says, "Yesod Yetzias Mitzrayim hu ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzesi eschem eretz Mitzrayim lios lachem lelokim." Right? We say that it's the end of the third paragraph of Kriya Shema. We say twice a day. And it says, "Shemisham zachu Yisrael lios am hanivchar." That's really that pasuk sort of sums it up. That's how we became the chosen nation. Lios lo la'am nachala. And he brings these different psukim to show our relationship with Hashem. As Hashem ha'amarta hayom v'Hashem ha'amircha hayom. Right, that's sort of the relationship that we talk about really in the Yom Neroim. This relationship of us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shezachu lelokei Yisrael v'zehu matzmiach hatshuos hin beruchnis hin begashmis. So what came out of Mitzrayim? And he gives us a whole litany of items. We have Matan Torah, we have Eretz Yisrael, we have the Beis HaBechira, the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohan Netzach, v'hakol hu me lihios lachem lelokim. All of this stems from the idea of lihios lachem lelokim. Shechol zechuyos kulan kshuros be'elokei Yisrael, because everything that we have is connected to Elokei Yisrael, that Hashem is Elokei Yisrael. So he keeps going on. Eretz Yisrael kshura be'elokei Yisrael kol hadar b'chutzlot z'dom kilo ein lokel. Well, we're going to skip a little bit of this, just because there's a lot here, and he really, and it's not all pertinent to what we want to try and understand with Yetzias Mitzrayim. But what I want to do now is sort of jump down a little bit, because I think it's helpful to really understand what he's saying if we look at the contrast. And he says, "V'hamabit b'hashkafa zu autoras haschar." So when we understand, if you really take a closer look at the schar, in other words, what's all the benefit of lihios lachem lelokim? Shakohu mizchuyos elokei Yisrael mediras b'haschar hu kfi midas hazachis bo yisparach. Everything is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything. So when we think of schar, you think of the reward. But what he's saying is the reward is Matan Torah. The reward is Eretz Yisrael, the Beis Hamikdash. All of these are the reward of lihios lachem elokim. So he says, Yavin al derech zeh gam sod ha'onesh v'chozer chalila. And he says, the opposite is, the flip side of this coin is, when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, the onesh that we have is shnetilas hamitzavim hem begashmis behem beruchias. It's that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes back all of those things that he gave us when we said, yes, we are, we are the Am HaNivchar, we are Hashem's nation. So when we pull back from that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also pulls back, and he takes with it both Gashmis and Ruchias.
Just super small, super quickly, but why not mention freedom? Why freedom is not one of the things you get?
So that's a great question. He doesn't go into that, but I think the idea is Zman Cherusenu means Cherus from the shibud of Mitzraim in order to be lihios lachem elokim. I think that's really what he's trying to intimate to us, is the Cherus is the ability, the opportunity for us to be lihios lachem elokim. Right? That's really what it's all about. It wasn't just to take away the yoke of servitude from Mitzrayim. That was just that was just giving us the opportunity, right? That was sort of just the preparation for all of the rest. And he says, right, so he says, so when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, that's also taking away. And what's interesting is what he's really sort of driving at is sometimes we think about Golus as a punishment, right? We talk about that as sort of or we hear people talk about it as here's what's happening to us as a punishment because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And what Yerucham is really painting for us is a picture of, it's not to be understood as a punishment, it's more of a consequence. When we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away all of those things from us, whether they're mitzvahs or whether it's gashmias or what have you. And he says, and I'm just going to jump down because this was one of the, I think that the ideas that he's sort of driving at is, because he talks about Golus and Gezeros. That's the title of this section of this Shtikot Torah, and he says all lahabit al Gezera zu shal shchita k'al Gezera antishamit. Right. So I think this is Yerucham survived the Holocaust by he was in the Mir Yeshiva. They survived through Shanghai. And I think this is after the war. He's talking about a gzera. I'm not sure what it was specifically, but there was a gzera where you couldn't do shchita. That's what he seems to be referring to here. The country, whatever country he's talking about, said no more Jewish shchita, or you can't get kosher meat. And he says, don't look at that as a gzera of an anti-Semitic. Don't just say, they're anti-Semites, right? It's an anti-Semitic thing, and this is just, we have to fight the anti-Semites. He says that's not how we should be thinking about it. He says, "Desivas agzerahu sherotzim chas v'sholom lahavshidosenu mitzvah shel kedusha." This is meaning the world, the outside world around us, is trying to remove the mitzvah of kedusha, of being able to eat kashers from us. Shemitzvah shchita chas v'sholom ozevas osenu umistalekas beitanu, to take away that mitzvah of shchita. Kol zman shehayu Yisrael mischazkim bekedusha lav bo aleim gezerus keelu. As long as we are strong in Torah and mitzvos, those gezeros won't happen. And again, he's showing that's again, when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, things are taken away from us. Gezerahu misrashlos b'mitzvah va'itza yechida sheyesh lanu levato hagezerahu lischazik b'mitzvah. So the more that we are mischazik in mitzvahs, we will, the consequence of that is the gezeros go away, We won't have those types of gezeros against us. So I just want to finish with this piece by Rav Yerucham, but I think it's a really powerful idea. It's almost like the flip side of Yetzias Mitzraim or Pesach is Tisha B'Av, right? When we're doing what we're supposed to be doing because we latch onto the power of Yetzias Mitzrayim, then we have all the things. We have everything that we need, whether it's Ruchnius or Gashmius. When we don't, the consequence is that we lose things like the Beis HaMikdash. And when I was reading through this, I was reminded of, it's interesting in our calendar, the way our calendar works out. The first day of Pesach is always on the same day of the week as Tisha B'Av. So first day of Pesach this year is on a Sunday, right? So Tisha B'Av will be on a Sunday as well. So there's always, there's this connection, and I think Rav Yerucham is giving us a little bit of a better understanding of how that connection really works. But he's painting us this picture that Lios Lachem Elokim is really what the essence of Pesach is. So let's now go further and look at Rav Dessler. I just want to look at this first paragraph by Rav Dessler. And I'm hoping that, again, we can sort of weave this into this idea of Lios Lachem Elokim. So Rav Dessler says, and this is right in the middle of his Torah on Pesach. So he says, Kvar bi'arnu, shelo lemazkeres anu choligim es hamoadim. He says, we've explained this before. We've already talked about this in the past. But the Moadim, the holidays for us, aren't simply a commemoration, right? We're not simply commemorating that we left Egypt. That's not the idea, right? Like we commemorate on the 4th of July, the independence and the revolution. That's not the idea, he says. Ella chozrim anu behem letochnam hamekori. We're really getting back. What we're supposed to be doing is returning to really the essence of what the holiday is all about. La'osa kedushas hazman shnishbaz gam achshav keve'es hahi. That we can go back to the Shefa, what happened, what's sort of contained within this day or these days of Pesach at that specific time. So what does that mean? So he says, Amar Marina V'Rabbeinu Zatzal Harad Tzvi Hirsch Broida Mikelm. So this is the father-in-law of his. So Rav Dessler's Rebbe was the Alter Mikelm, right? The Rosh Hashiva, the Alter of Kelm, and this is his father-in-law, Rav Tzvi Hirsch Broida, who I think also was the Rebbe of Rav Yisrael Salant. And he quotes him, and he says, Ki lo hazman over al ha'adam, ela ha'adam nosea betoch hazman. So I think this is such a beautiful idea. He says, time doesn't, we think about time, we talk about how time passes, or we talk about how time flies. But he says that's really the wrong way to think about it. He says, we travel through time. Time isn't what's traveling. It's we who travel through the calendar. And he says, Lamashal, B'Shabbos harishona ki'ilu nikva'a tachana sheshma Shabbos. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sort of created the calendar, he said, the first Shabbos became a bus stop, a stop. And that's called, the name of it is Shabbos. And so every week, as we flow through the week, we wind up at that same stop, Shabbos. And it's mamish osa hashpas kedusha atzma shel Shabbos Bereshis. This really is the Shabbos that we come to. That's Shabbos Bereshis. We're simply flowing through the weeks until we get back to that stop called Shabbos Bereshis, which is our Shabbos. And it says v'chein b'moadim. So too, all of our holidays. B'chol shana v'shana chozer ha'adam u'magia el tachana gu'ulas Mitzraim. So we're heading for the next stop in the, along the stops of the Shalosh Regalim. First of the year is Gu'ulas Mitzrayim, is Pesach, is Yetzias Mitzrayim. Asher b'zman hahu efshar lahasig hashba hagilu shel cherus. Zman Cherusenu mamish. So when we talk about Zman Cherusenu, it's not like, again, that we're commemorating it as Zman Cherusenu. What he's saying is that we are arriving at a true Zman Cherusenu that we can sort of connect to, right? That we hear people talk about this. The rabbis talk about how we can connect to Shabbos or connect to the holidays. And I think, it's such a beautiful idea that he's giving us is it's more concrete, right? That it really is. We flow through the holidays, we flow through the year, and then we get back to that same Zman Cherusenu. So again, connecting this back to what Rav Yerucham was saying earlier, that the power of Pesach is Lios Lachem Elokim. This is really our ability to personally connect back to that at that same time, and connect to the power of the day. So that's how Rav Detzler's addition to this. What I want to finish with is the Sfas Emes, and I'm hoping that this sort of all comes together to really help us understand, what we're coming up to, and just the power of Pesach, and what it is, the opportunity that it really provides to us. So the Sfas Emes in his Torah on Pesach says, "Ksiv le'osen niflos gedos levado kilem chaser." This is the pasuk in Tehillim in the kapitel that we refer to as Halo Hagadol. It's the whole list of kilem chasdos, right? We say it on Shabbos morning, on Yantif morning. So the Zohar Kodesh has a question. I'm just going to say it outside because he doesn't word the whole thing. It doesn't spell it out for us, but he says, if you look at that pasuk, you have to ask yourself a question. What does it mean to the one who does great wonders by himself, Levado, Ki Lelem Chasto, because he is eternal. His chesed is eternal, right? So what does that mean? So we're referring to Hashem clearly, Los Niflos Gedolos. He does great wonders, Levado, by himself. Who do we expect, right, is going to be helping HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Who do we expect that is going to be with him when he's doing these Niflos Gedolos? Like that's the question of the Zohar. So the Zohar Kodesh says in Parshas Balak, Perush HaKadosh Baruch Hu osa neis la'adam ve'ena modia l'shum beria raku levado yodea. What it means is that not that anybody would help HaKadosh Baruch Hu chas v'shalom, right? It's not that. It's that nobody even knows that it happened. So he gives an example. What does that mean? Hari nachash ba lenashcho v'nafal even al hanachash v'hargo ayin sham. So there's a couple of different examples, but the Zohar says, no, what this means is that you're traveling through the desert, a snake is sneaking up behind you and is about to bite you, and the rock falls on the snake dies, you keep walking, and you don't even realize that you've been saved. That is le'osin niflos gedolos levado. That's the levado. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu even realizes how often we are being saved. How many times you get delayed and you're upset because you got delayed and then your car, and maybe you missed a traffic accident or who knows what, right? It's that type of idea. That's what the Zohar Kodesh is spelling out for us. So this Sfas Emes adds on though. He says, "V'yesh lomar ki haniflos she'asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu lechlalo Yisrael." But what about those that happened to Klal Yisrael? Hagam ki ro'osam. Clearly, everybody saw them, right? We know about them. We know about the Makos. We know about Kriyas Yamsuf, etc., etc. Mikol makom hu levado yodeh gadol haniflos kihem ledoros. But only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the consequences over the generations, right? Think about all the generations that have passed. It's only because our ancestors went through Mitzraim that we're physically here today. So all of the consequences across the generations, even those miracles that we are aware of, we don't know the consequences of. That's what it means. It's eternal. It's not just eternal meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is eternal. It's eternal in that there's long-term consequences that go on and on and on. Right? There's these continual fruits that are born from all these wonders. And now he's tying it into Pesach. So the question that I think we all struggle with is, what does it mean when Chazal tell us every generation, right? Chayav Adam Liros Ki'ilu Hu Yatsa. We have to picture ourselves as if we left Mitzrayim. What does that mean? So it says, because of Osano Hotzi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out. Ulechein, Mitzuvim Lizkar Yetzias Mitzrayim B'chol Yom. And that's why we have a mitzvah we have to remember, or we have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. That's why we say the third paragraph of Shema, even at night, is because it's Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim, that last pasuk that we talked about. Again, tying this back to what Rav Yerucham told us, that it's all about Liyosh Lachem Elokim. We say that every day, twice a day, because we have to be mazkir. We have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. Ki ha'geula shel Mitzrayim mischadesh b'chol yom tamid. The idea of the exodus, of the geula from Mitzrayim, is something that renews itself every day. And I think, again, we'll tie this back and we'll say what that means is that we can think back and we can say, you know what? I am going to strengthen my connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am going to remember that Liyos Lachem Elokim, that's what it's all about. I can do that on a daily basis and sort of, connect to the power of that. Right? Every one of us can do this. Because all of us are included in all of those wonders that happened so many generations ago. So again, all those generations and the consequences, all those wonders that happened so many thousands of years ago, but they're still connected to us because we are the consequence of those wonders, of what happened to our ancestors. But only HaKadosh Baruch Hu really knows all of it, because there's no we can't understand it all. Why? Because this is really the eternal chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's not just looking at it from each generation, but he's seeing it all the way through the sands of time, of the whole continuation. So hopefully this is giving us a little bit of an idea, maybe a little bit of inspiration, right? What is Pesach all about? Why do we have all this preparation, all this work that we put into it? It's stressful. It's a lot of work to do. But we see the power behind it, right? Going back to the first tickle, that if we latch on to the power of Liyos Lachem Elokim, that's the source of all gashmis, of all ruchnis in our lives, that we can continue. And with Rav Dessler's idea from his Rebbe of understanding that it's not just a commemoration, but this is really the power that Pesach holds every year, that we latch onto because we flow through the ebbs of time and we come right back to the same Tesvav Nisan, right, that our ancestors left Mitzrayim, and we're part of that. It's an amazing idea. Anyway, I hope that this is a good inspiration, a good first step in our own preparations for Pesach, and we'll try to continue more around probably the Seder next week.